Hi guys, welcome to the second session on NLSAT. This is going to be pretty interesting because this session is being taken on popular demand because a lot of you wanted to know. A lot of you were concerned about the second part of the paper, which is part B, which basically deals with your writing abilities. And so today, Hemant will take you through as to what should be an ideal strategy about it, how should you go about it, etc., etc. And he'll also try and solve a sample question with all of you. I don't think I have to like really take up a lot of time of yours. Over to you, Hemant.
Yeah. Uh, Hi, everyone. So this session is primarily dedicated to how we are going to go about part B, majorly because there isn't a lot of material that is available on part B. It's hard to just go up on internet and find if there is something which can help you with part B. So I have personally taken up resources and material from the places I can and a bit of experience to just give you some guidance on the way you can approach part B and how it could be helpful for you. The way I'm going to go about this session, I think I primarily plan on using a problem and then just go about solving that problem. And from that, we'll just get some pointers that you could use to write your own answers for the part B. So clearly, while doing so, you should also keep it in mind that whatever your own personal ideas are while writing for part B, you should stick to them as well. But here are a few general ones that I wanted to show to you today through, we'll take up some problem. The problem I've taken up is from the NLSAT sample paper for the last year that they gave us. Uh, I think Aditya will be screen sharing that problem with you, or else you can also just look it up on the internet and find it. So the problem is already up there on the screen. So that's the problem that we'll be discussing. That's because I think like if we'll just discuss a actual problem on hand, then that could give you a lot more clarity on the way in which you want to approach the part B. And I think what is really tricky about part B so far is that there isn't clarity on how and what you should do, what the structure of answer you should follow, what all can you write in it, and what all you cannot write in it. I plan on addressing all of these questions, but on a very general note at the very outset, I want to point out that part B is actually very easy in the sense that it is not meant to complicate this exam, but I in fact think that part B is meant to look at your very common logical skills, how well you can reason out things in the most basic way. So it's really not a difficult portion. It's really not meant to make this paper a lot more difficult, but I think once you get the basics of it clear, I think it'll be the easiest portion that you'll be doing in this paper. With that being said, in the last session I did talked about some things about part B. So just for the interest of everyone, I'll just reiterate them quickly because more or less I did feel them they were important. I think at the very top of it comes the fact that part B is not about your legal knowledge. It doesn't ask you to display your legal knowledge, and it is not required or necessary for you to display your legal knowledge. Once we are solving the problem, I'll tell you the examples of the things you shouldn't particularly write, especially in terms of any legal specific knowledge that you may have. So it's really not recommended and it's really not needed either. Secondly, um, there really isn't any fixed structure for Part B, all right? Because if you look at the exam guidelines or the exam notification, it really doesn't ask you a particular way in which you should write your answer in the Part B. So, in absence of examiner not asking you to write your answer in a specific way, you shouldn't put a imaginary burden on you that this is how I have to write, or this is what I have to include, or this is what I do not have to include. A few clarifications have come to me, and I'll address those clarifications. So, this one of the person is asked if you have to write your stance for part B in the starting or at the end. I think just out of common sense, preferably you should mention it in the beginning as well, so that when the examiner is checking it, the person knows the line of thought that you have taken. And then you can also mention it once again in the end as well. So I think like in general, it would be helpful to mention it at the start as well as at the end. But I think at the start, it's sort of become important so that the person knows what is that you've taken. They've read the through entire question and then they're getting to know what side you've taken. I think it just throws them off a little bit. Secondly, in terms of pointers, can you follow pointers for part B? Um, I personally think you shouldn't follow pointers. So I exactly don't remember, although exam notification doesn't say how you should go about writing your answers in part B. But I think the idea about part B is that you should write the answers in a, like a paragraphic format. Okay, so it should be like in a single paragraph. You can divide it into different paragraphs. That you could understand. You write one paragraph and second paragraph. But I think pointers is not exactly something that would be recommended in my opinion, because then pointers kind of become a essay kind of an answer. The one they're looking for is a simple legal passage from you. So I think you should try and attempt to write it into a single flow instead of writing into a pointers specifically. Nextly, time management. Okay, it's really important for you to manage your time for part B, because I think all of you have different levels of like, because the question, in my opinion, as you can see on the screen itself as well, the question will be anywhere between half of the page of a A4 size sheet to like two-third of the size of the A4 size sheet. So it's quite lengthy. It takes time to go through the question. So it's important that you manage that speed for yourself, and equally that you uh, see how much time for you it takes to finish that portion. So it's important that you manage your time, and this is one of the reasons we've brought you the mock test series, so that you just can time yourself. You can see the amount of time you're giving to writing every answer in the part B. Now, the methods of writing an answer in part B. There are certainly no exhaustive methods. It's an entirely non-exhaustive list, but I think some of them are standard ones that you can follow. Uh, the few ones that I mentioned in the last sessions were like using first principles, using logical deduction, using material facts of the problem, and I think it would be easier to understand if I actually just jump into the problem. All right. So the problem is up on the screen. It's as I said, it's available on the internet as well. If you look up for the NLSAT sample paper, it's available on the NLS website as well. Otherwise, it's on screen as well. So this problem is about this person. Just a second, I'll also open it up on my screen. Wait a minute. So yeah, I think the first thing you do once you have a problem is that you give it a quick read, okay? And while reading it, the first thing you have to do is to see what are the material facts in the problem. That's one of the most important things you have to do. That's the first, take it as like a guiding principle when you're approaching part B, which is that you must first note down whichever are the important, relevant facts in the problem. Because in many of the problems, you'll see a mixture of certain things which may not be as important, and then there are material facts around which you have to weave your answer. The reason I say this is because I think the intention of the examiners with part B is to check how well you can frame an answer based upon information that is given to you. I don't think they're looking for people who can frame an answer based upon their own independent knowledge or based upon what you have already learned or whatever your prior knowledge is. I think the intent behind part B from examiner's perspective is to understand that if they've given you a problem, how well can you understand it, your comprehension skills by understanding the problem, then subsequently gather the important information from the problem. And once you've gathered the relevant information, then you have to mold it into a well coherent answer. Those things are the ones that I believe the examiner is willing to check by the part B and the kind of problems they're giving you. So I think just for the benefit of everyone, I'll just move through the problem, and then I'll talk about what are the material facts that I feel in the problem, and then how can you use them to write your answer. So I think, yeah, so the problem is like, if you haven't already read it, just go through it quickly. So the problem is Salim has a savings account with IGED Bank and regularly used its ATM to withdraw money from its account. He noticed an ATM located about 50 meters away from an IGED bank branch one day, but was a little suspicious since the bank's logo and branding on the ATM looked a little different from how it appeared on bank's other ATMs. He called the bank's customer helpline and reported this. The bank's representatives promised to look into the matter. However, Salim did not hear back from the bank for 6 days and so thought that there was nothing wrong with the ATM. He went to the ATM, and although he entered the correct code for his card, the machine displayed an error message and Salim could not withdraw any money from his account. Later in the day, he received an SMS message indicating that a large amount of cash, much larger than bank's daily permissible limit for ATM withdrawals, has been withdrawn from his account using an IGET bank ATM in another part of the city. Salim was shocked since he had not authorized such withdrawal. He called the bank's customer helpline immediately, reported the incident. The bank's representatives were unable to offer any help. Salim then filed a complaint with the police. An investigation revealed that some miscreant had set up a fake ATM, and they had done, and that ATM looks like an IGED bank ATM, and they had stolen information including PIN codes from people who tried to use the ATM. They kept the fake ATM operational for a week and later withdrew those large sums of money from the accounts of people who used the fake ATM. Salim wants the bank to compensate from the loss. The problem is asking you, should the bank compensate? Firstly, the question before us is, should the bank compensate? So you have to clearly take a stance. You can either say, yes, the bank should compensate, then write your answer, or two, no, the bank shouldn't compensate, and then write the answer. As I just said, I think it's useful to write your stance at the very beginning of your answer. It just allows the examiner to know what stance you have taken rather than at the end or somewhere in the middle. Or in some cases, if you don't write it at all and think that examiner will gather it from the answer you've written, I think it shows negatively towards your answer. So just write it for the uh, convenience purposes at the very start. Now, having read the problem, I think the first step that I want to take is to just jot down what are the relevant facts that you can use to frame your answer. I think the first thing you can see is that this person, Salim, is a regular customer, which means he regularly goes to the ATM and withdraws money. I think it will be important, and I'll show you its importance when I start framing the answer. So I think this person is a regular one, which means he's repeatedly going to use that ATM. Secondly, this fake ATM is located only 50 meters away from the bank branch, which means it's in a very close proximity with the bank branch. I think the third important thing is that Salim himself is suspicious of the fact that this ATM looks a bit shady. It is not looking like the one that he's used to going, but in fact, it looks a little bit different. And he gathers that from its logo and other information. Fourth one is I think that he calls the customer helpline, and bank's representatives have promised him to look into the matter. So it becomes important, especially if you highlight the word promise to look into the matter. Fifth is there was no response for as many as 6 days. So the timeline of 6 days is important for us to know if it's a reasonable time that authority can take to look into matter or not. Seventh one is the machine displayed an error message and Salim could not withdraw any money from his account. So is that error message that Salim saw, is it of any importance? Can he use it while trying to ask bank for some compensation, or can bank ask him to say that there was an error message and you nonetheless thought that it's okay? Then the second last is he called the bank's customer helpline immediately and reported the incident. So the moment he saw that some people have withdrawn the money from his account, a huge sum of money, he immediately did his due diligence and he told the authorities. So can he use that to ask for compensation? And the last is that this is a fake ATM and it was kept operational for a week. I think this is an important one. The fake ATM is like, okay, we have that information, but they kept it operational for a week. Okay. Now, these are all the relevant facts in my mind. I think all of you, with your own individual discretion, can also see something else as a relevant fact. But I think broadly, these are the important ones for me. And if you think there is something else also, I think it's up for you to use it in your answer while writing it. Clearly, I'm not the authority on telling you what is a relevant fact or not, but I think if you have something in your own mind which you think is important, feel free to use that. Now, let's go about. The first thing I'll discuss is no, bank shouldn't compensate Salim. It's Salim's mistake and bank has no obligation to compensate him. So how can we use now our facts in framing the answer from the perspective of bank, that bank is not liable to pay to Salim? The first thing is that Salim is a regular customer of the ATM, which means that I can assume that there is a certain level of familiarity that Salim has with the ATM. So therefore, if I'm going to a shop every day, if I'm, let's say, purchasing a bag of a packet of biscuits almost every single day or almost every other, routinely I'm purchasing it, and in case some one day the shopkeeper hands me out a counterfeit bag or the counterfeit packet, it's a fake packet of biscuit, I think the familiarity will let me know that this is a fake packet because I'm using it so often. So therefore, I think it's reasonable to expect that Salim should have known better. He should have known that this is a fake ATM in a much more clearer way. Because if I'm going to an ATM almost on a routinely basis, I think that familiarity of being a regular customer will tell me that something is actually original or not original. So therefore, I think in that sense, being a regular customer, means that you should be able to tell up the difference between if something is an original or not an original bank. Secondly, uh, the ATM is only 50 meters away. So this is even more important. All right. So I think if an ATM is not next to the bank's branch, it's a genuinely a fishy thing, right? So we have all been to banks, and the ATMs, especially if we go to an HDFC bank, the ATM of a HDFC bank will be right next to the HDFC bank. It will not be somewhere 100 meters away or 50 meters away. The ATMs are always either adjoining the bank or they are either inside the bank complex itself. The fact that this one is actually away from the bank in itself sparks the question of suspicion, which he did have, but it's one which he should have taken more seriously. Because if a bank's ATM of the same branch is that far away from the bank, then it does show that there is something wrong about it, because usually the ATMs are somewhere in the bank complex or somewhere very close to it, not 50 meters away from it. Then comes, uh, yes, this person was suspicious now. He knew that there is something fishy about it. Nonetheless, he went inside the bank. Now, we can say that despite having that much amount of suspicion, he went inside the bank. So first thing he could have done is that he could have gone back to the bank, given the bank is only 50 meters away, and confirmed if it's an ATM of your branch or not. It's the most logical thing to do, because the quickest recourse measure that you have, if you are not sure about something, then you'll just go back to the bank authorities inside the bank and let you know if that ATM is a part of their branch or not. So this he took the other recourse, which is calling the helpline and all. I think he had an option of going back to the bank and asking them if or not it's a part of your bank's branch or not. And I think right there itself, he could have had his remedy solved. So therefore, I think that not going back to the bank and asking them shows that it was onus on him to actually go back and make and confirm if or not it's a part of their branch. Now, this is the other thing I want to tell, and this is very important: star market. Okay. Now we clearly know that he called up the bank's helpline and asked them if or not it's a ATM of your bank branch or not, which means he has done his part. He has done some amount of due diligence. We are saying he could have gone back to the bank also and asked them, but that's fine. Now there is something that you clearly see is against your side. This statement that he actually went up and asked authorities and asked helpline people that tell me if it's a part of your bank or not, then he has done some of his duty that he was supposed to do, which means this is a point clearly going against me. There is no denying that. I think in your answers, you should always factor into things that are going against you, acknowledge them, and then respond to them. I think it shows a great thing that you're willing to address the arguments that are not going in your favor and then show them that, look, I acknowledge that this person did his part. He informed the authorities, he asked for their clarification, they didn't respond to him. So, well, it can't be said that it is fault. In your answers, even if you're taking the side of the bank, you should first mention that, look, I acknowledge he did his work, and then you should respond to it. So, the way you can respond to it is that if the authorities never responded, then it was not fair of him to assume that it is actually an all right ATM, or that it is actually the bank's ATM. Because if I'm not sure about something and I ask for a clarification, haven't gotten that clarification, let's say it's authorities' fault. In worst case, it's their fault that they never responded. But does it mean then that somehow means that okay, this bank is a original ATM and it's actually a part of the bank and I should go and withdraw money? Despite I having a suspicion, despite not hearing from the authorities, on which basis did he just infer out of his mind that it's an all right ATM, I should go in and withdraw cash? So clearly, in absence of not getting any instructions from the bank, on which basis did he go into the bank? Because either they should have said yes, it's a fine bank, or no. If they never responded, I think probably I first thing he should have done is he definitely shouldn't have gone into it, because if somebody neither says yes or no, you can't assume either of the two. It's not how it works. So that's the first thing you can say to it. The second thing you could have said to it is that if one option or one recourse fails, you go to other recourse. Okay. So if you, or let's say, did something wrong in your application while filling the NLSAT form, and you wrote an email to authorities and they didn't give you an answer, do you just stop right there itself? No, you instead take some other recourse. You will call them up, or you will try to get into contact with some other person through maybe visiting the college itself. So I think if one option fails, he should have maybe, I don't know, go to some other ATM which he is more sure about that it's definitely IGED Bank's ATM, because I know this ATM is not it's looking fishy to me. So he always has an option of using some other ATM, or else he could have gone back to the bank. He could have written an email to authorities. He could have done other options that are available to a common average person. So why didn't he take those options? Why didn't he take those recourse? Why did he assume that if a helpline authority has never responded, then it's just a settled matter? I'm not going to hear from them. He could have also reminded them. He could have called them once again, take a follow up on his query that I made this query 6 days ago. You haven't responded to me. Give me a response. But instead, he did nothing. He just assumed that if they haven't responded, then it's all right. So you see, that way you can use all these material facts in molding an answer in a most convincing and logical way in your favor. So in this way, I have acknowledged that there is an argument that is going against me, and then you just try and find responses from the situation itself to show that fine, he did something, but you can always prove why it was either not sufficient, or you could show that it was not up to the mark. You could show that there were still some more things he could have done in addition to it, and all those things. So these are some ways in which you can just do this. Therefore, I think it really gives you not just brownie points. I think it actually gives you substantially high marks if you acknowledge something that doesn't goes in your favor and respond to it as part of your answer. Then the other fact is, yeah, there was no response for 6 days. I think you can also say that, look, it's a standard practice that authorities don't reply to you like within a day or two. Give them at least a minimum period of a week. Okay, so if it's only being 6 days, I think it's fine, because bank authorities have so much work on their shoulders. They probably may need a little bit more time. So I think he acted a bit too soon by just waiting for 6 days and then rushing into the ATM. Or you could also say, as I just mentioned earlier, that you could just take up a follow up with them. Okay, just ask them once again, what is the update on my query? He didn't do any of that. Then comes the machine displayed an error message. I think this is also very important, because once you went into the ATM, you did all the right things. You entered the right information. You entered the right pin. I'm assuming he had enough money in his ATM as well. Otherwise, the ATM would show that there is not enough balance in your account. But nonetheless, it showed some fishy error, which he's not sure of what that error is. So at that point, he should have actually contacted the authorities. He should have told them that I tried to withdraw some cash from my ATM and it showed this error, which I'm not aware of. What is this error about? I think instead of telling them after that his money has been taken out of his account, once he's been duped by these miscreants, he should have done that before he got duped by them. Okay, because if I'm going to some place, and if I've done the right things, if I go to an ATM, I've put in the right information, right pin, every procedure I followed, and yet it shows some unknown error, which you are not sure what this error is. I think I would first thing I would do is just go up to the bank and ask them what this error is about, or I'll just at that point also I'll contact the helpline authorities that are being faced with this error. So the due diligence he did after he got robbed of the money, he got duped by the miscreants, he should have done it before that. I think that is something would have helped the bank authorities to see, well, something wrong is with their ATM. And then he called the bank's customer. Yeah, by miscreants, they kept the fake ATM operational for a week. Cool. So the, the ATM was operational for a week, which means that this ATM wasn't there before this person. So that also gives you a small intuition of the fact that this is a newly formed ATM. You haven't seen this before, so you should definitely take upon yourself to ask if this ATM is actually a part of your banks. But nonetheless, this is not as convincing as the previous ones. So this is how you can go about enlisting all the material facts and then taking out logical and convincing arguments out of it. I have not used anything outside of this problem. I've only relied my logic. I've only relied upon the situation and the facts and the information that is given in the problem itself. And I've used it to write an answer. Now, clearly, there are better ways. I'm not showing that this is the best way, clearly not. But this is the I think I would say a guiding principle for you to go about it. All of you will have different ways of understanding a problem, and all of you will have a different way of taking one fact into a different way. So you surely can use that into your favor. But this is the general way I think you should approach a problem, especially in the part B, that you should understand its facts and you should then make the arguments out of those facts. What you shouldn't do now, for instance, you can't just start up by saying that, oh, I know this banking regulation act which says that if the customer has asked the bank's helpline this and this, and if they don't respond within 3 days, then the act says that the customer can do this and that. That is specific legal knowledge I'm using, or I'm using something that is not given in the problem. There may be some act like this, or there may not be some act like this, but the idea behind this is that do not use those sort of legal arguments or some special knowledge based arguments that you only have. And I told you the reason, because I think examiners want to see how well you can do without relying upon your own special knowledge that you may have. They just want to see how well you can do logically in a given situation when some facts are given to everyone equally, rather than relying upon some like very uh, niche knowledge that you may have about some topic. So this is the general framework of how you could go about and making an answer for part B. Now, if you have any questions, just pop them up on the chat and I'll just address them, because I've just taken up one part of how you could go about solving your problems in the part B. Is there a question here? How can we respond to the fact that bank allowed to withdraw more than daily permissible limit? That's certainly there. That's an argument you'll make against the bank. So I've only discussed right now for the bank. I'll now discuss against the bank. Okay. Uh, Now, the one that you've just highlighted, should the format be intro, body, and conclusion? Up to you. Totally up to you. One thing that people had asked is that uh, what should be the structure of the writing the answer? For instance, should I first list out all the facts of the problem? Then I should list out my stance. Then should I list out my analysis and then conclusion? I think you could try doing that, but I think it would be very time consuming. Certainly don't waste time in writing facts separately, because facts are given in the problem. You don't need to reiterate the facts. While you're writing your answer, write a fact and then write the conclusion that you drew out of that fact simultaneously. Do not write the facts in one column, then writing the analysis in another column. It's just my personal advice. Certainly, you can do so. If you are somebody who can write quickly and you have a good writing speed, by all means, you can first write the facts which you thought are important to the problem, and then you start analyzing them. You could definitely do that, but I think it's a little bit time consuming. Instead, I think you should just interweave your facts and your analysis together. In that way, you can show that you know the fact, and you can also show that you've analyzed it. As for your intro and all that, I really don't think an introduction particularly is needed to this. Uh, you can simply straight away dive into the analysis part. So some of the people will show you as to it's a format used in law school that is people told is IRAC, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. I genuinely don't think you should do this in an exam, especially because if you'll first write what is the issue in the problem, what is the rule? Rule you're not supposed to write over here, because rule is generally a legal thing, and then analysis. But yes, you should have a conclusion definitely. I think the general format you can use is just simply starting by taking your stance, justifying your stance, using your logic and your analysis portion, and then concluding it. I think that's a fair enough part that you can do in your intro and your analysis and conclusion. So I think if you want to still follow the structure, I think a very small intro at the best. Do not take too much into it, because the more facts you write, the less marks you get for it, because facts are given. It's nothing you're doing on your own. It's nothing new. The person knows, the examiner knows the facts are there. So minimize them and instead give more space to your analysis part in your sheet, and then quickly sum it up with a conclusion. So that's my suggestion for it. Okay, just a second. There are too many questions. How can you respond to the fact that the bank allowed? Should the format be intro? No. GK, although I'm not discussing part A today, so I think I would only stick to part B. You could just look up to the last session we took on which we discussed about part B or part A. Essay writing, I'll just come into in a bit. I'll just cover the first section of part B, and then I'll get into the second section of the part B. How can we respond to the fact that bank should we clear our stance in the beginning or in the end? In the beginning, you should clarify what your stance is in the beginning, is my advice, because in the end, I think if you tell it in the beginning, it's easier for somebody who's checking your paper to follow through what you're writing. Because if at the end I'm writing it, I think it's just like I've read the entire thing and then I get to know what your stance is. It's beneficial to write it in the beginning so that the person, whoever is checking, has a smooth chain of thoughts with regards to your answer, and they know, okay, this person is taking this side, and then they'll accordingly check your answer. I think in the end, it's only a bit of inconvenience, in my opinion, that comes. So I think I would personally recommend that you clarify it in the beginning, and then you can once again reiterate in the end if you wish to. Should we stick to the side we feel is right, or should we pick a side which is more that this is a good question. Okay. Yeah. In my opinion, I think you should stick to the site which has, in your opinion, better facts, or you think it has a content which you can best mold into a good answer. Instead of looking for a site, for instance, in this case, instead of going towards your moral intuition by thinking that, well, why would I take bank side? They are frauding a customer who was just going about his daily business and had gotten robbed of so much money. So I would definitely say don't think too much into morality of it. Anyway, when you go into law, morality is not that important. Instead, look towards which side you feel has much more convincing, relevant facts, which you think you can structure into a well coherent answer. So that's my advice. Definitely pick up a side where you think you have the best possibility of using the facts to make your answer look as convincing as possible. Should we use analogies for argument? Is that unnecessary? You could by all means use analogies. I have also pointed out in the beginning that logical analogies or logical deduction is a good thing. You can certainly use your analogies. You can certainly say, um, for example, in this case, if I'm buying a packet of biscuit from a shop every day and I know what it looks like, I know the paper of what it looks like, then would I uh, if on certain day I'm unsure about the packet of biscuit, would I just buy it and go away? I'll ask the shopkeeper that if or not. It's a bad analogy, I agree, but it's an analogy. You can definitely use an analogy. It certainly helps you with a like a intuition pump is a terminology we use. That is, it shows that if a similar situation would have been emulated in other scenario, then would you have done the same thing? And if the answer is no, then why are you doing it here? So please do use analogies. I don't think they're unnecessary. They're actually useful. What is the word limit we follow? Could you please elaborate a little bit more from the conclusion and what to mention in the conclusion part? Firstly, for word limit, I don't think there is any word limit for the part B. I think you'll be given one side of the A4 size sheet to write your answer, if I'm correct. Yeah, you'll get the maximum limit is one side of the A4 size sheet. So I think minimum limit, in my opinion, should be somewhere around half a page. And I think you can even fill the entire page. I don't think there is any prejudice if you fill the entire page, or I don't think it's a huge problem if you just only write half a page or even less than half a page. As the saying goes, like quality is more important than quantity. But I think so long as your answer is making sense, so long as your answer is like picking up all the relevant things and it's a good structured answer, I don't think the how much you write is much of an issue. Also, the conclusion part. I think conclusion part really doesn't require too much thinking. Just as soon as you've figured out all that you've written your analysis part, then you can just simply say, well, based upon the facts that I've just analyzed for you in the above uh, answer, I feel the bank isn't liable to compensate Mr. Salim. That's it. Really. It's not an essay conclusion, right? It's a very short answer that you have to write. Part B, legal aptitude answers are very short answers. Unlike an essay where you need a very well thought out conclusion, in this you don't need a very, I think, analytical conclusion, just a simple basic conclusion, such as that I've mentioned all the relevant facts, I have analyzed it, and therefore I think this is what the uh, logical outcome of the given problem is, and thus I support the bank side. That's it. Keep it as simple as possible. Is the word limit still 150 words and should be strictly below 150 or something around, or is it allowed to? I think 150 is roughly the amount of words you'll write on one side of the A4 size sheet. So this is the ballpark figure. I think there is no strict requirement. I think word limit just usually means is the upper limit that you should just try and not cross. Even if you write 100 words, it's all well and good. If you write 90 words, it's all well and good. Don't take a word limit as like the very strict bar. I think somewhere around 60 words would also be fine if your answer is good enough. And if you write exactly 150 words, even that's fine. uh, you're unlikely going to be penalized or unlikely going to be not marked uh, optimally just because you have written either 150 words or 100 words or 50 words. It's completely fine. Although I think like your word limit would be much more better elaborated in your answer when you'll get the question. But 150 is roughly the number of words you'll write on one side of A4 size sheet, so that's fine. You may not be too much concerned about it. Okay, so I'll just quickly now discuss the other side of this, which is how should you support if you want to support Salim's side. Um, I think some of, again, using the same set of arguments. Firstly, ATM is only 50 meters away from the bank, which means it's bank's responsibility to look if there are some people who are trying to use its name and instead trying to dupe people. It's a bank's primary obligation, right? Like if somebody is using my brand name, if somebody is using my brand name to defraud people and causing people problems, and given this problem says that there are multiple other people also who have been duped by these miscreants, which means they must have also called up the bank authorities to ask for clarification. So despite bank being told about it and this place being only 50 meters away from the bank, and it's in principle, if somebody is using my name to defraud other people, then it's my obligation to clarify to the people that this following ATM is not associated with my bank and take appropriate action against those people, you know. People put in their trust with the bank, especially when they deposit their money. And it's bank's responsibility to uphold that trust. And that trust must not be violated in any circumstance. Because over here, we're talking about money. It is something which, if lost, it takes a lot of time for people to earn their money. And banks, therefore, has a higher responsibility to make sure that people are not facing any inconvenience. So you can make that argument of bank's responsibility or obligation. In general, the principal argument here would be if anybody's name is being used by someone else to defraud people, then it's that person's responsibility whose name is being taken to defraud people to make sure that people know what is the truth about it and not somebody else's. If my name is being used by someone to tell that Hemant is doing this, Hemant is doing that, or this person is associated with this organization, that it's organization's responsibility. So I think that's a good argument to start with, that this is a bank's primary responsibility. And then you can then go start going into relevant facts. So first is the one that I told you, basic principle, first principle. If somebody uses someone's name to defraud people, then it's the person's responsibility. That's a basic first principle you can use. And then you can go into relevant facts. You can say if somebody opens a counterfeit shop just 50 meters away, then it's genuinely a concerning thing. The bank should have that much knowledge. The bank authorities are going in from that road. They must have seen this bank ATM. Shouldn't they have known that this is actually not a part of their branch or something? Shouldn't they have taken some action against it? So definitely that shows that bank was delinquent in not acting against it. Then of course you can definitely use the fact that bank authorities were appraised about this issue and they then take appropriate action. Over there, you can talk about no response for 6 days. You can definitely say, look, well, we do not know how much time is permissible for a bank authority to respond to a query, but we do definitely know that if it's a query regarding somebody putting up a fake ATM under your name, then it's a big enough issue. So that thing should be on their priority list. They should take it as the most important thing that they should first deal with. I get it, banks have a lot of things they have to deal with in a single day. But if somebody tells me that people are getting defrauded or that somebody has put up an ATM under your name and is collecting people's personal information, which is very sensitive, which can cause like people to lose their lifetime of earnings, then that's a very concerning thing. Banks should take cognizance of that at the very first place. They shouldn't wait for anything. Put all things aside. First, deal with this issue. So I think you can definitely say that I don't care about how many days it is. I think they should have dealt with this as soon as possible and as promptly as possible. So it's clearly too long a delay that they're taking 6 days to respond to the customers. Or they could have even issued a simple notice to customers to say that we are still in the middle of our checking proceedings and all customers are advised to not use the following bank branch ATM as we are not sure. So they didn't do anything. They just simply didn't do anything. And in this case, it's bank's responsibility because bank is the one which is uh, accountable to the customers. Customers aren't accountable to their bank. It's the bank which has a higher degree of accountability. Therefore, I think as a matter of accountability, banks should have taken more positive action, should have informed the customers, should have kept everyone in the loop, and done their due diligence, which they didn't do. I think then one of the facts you all pointed out in the comment section was that how can somebody, even if they were duped, even if let's say all things have gone wrong, the person's money has been taken from their bank account illegally, how could they extract more money than what's the daily permissible limit? So that shows that there is some fault with the bank's internal system as well. That somebody, even if I get someone's ATM, let's say I have picked up someone's ATM, I know their PIN, and I go in the ATM, I take up their information. How can they still take up more money than what is permissible? Even if I am the one who has done everything wrong, then how can they still take up more than the daily permissible limit? So that shows there is something, an internal error with the bank's processing system or with their like machine or something. So that's certainly alarming thing that the bank is not strictly following its daily permissible limit. And I think lastly, one other fact you can say is that the ATM was operational for a week. Imagine somebody running up a counterfeit shop right next to you for almost a week and you're unaware of it. That's high level of abdication of responsibility. Like absolutely no idea that somebody is trying to con people by using your name under your disguise, and you have no idea about it. And it's operational not for a day or two. I get it if somebody comes up and puts up a shop of counterfeit Nike shoes right next to Nike showroom and sells their shoes and goes away in a day. They may not know about it. But if somebody is running a shop and running an ATM for 7 days, which is a long enough time, and you have no idea about it, I think it shows that bank was clearly not taking the responsibility properly. So I think this is the way you can go about framing your answers for the other section, which so I think this is what you could do for your answers so far as part B goes. I think I've taken up this problem. I've told you the way you can make a very basic first principle argument. I've told you the way you can then integrate the facts and put out your answers in the best way possible. So that's that. Now I think I should give some time to structure as well because it seems a lot of you have questions with regards to structure of your answering. Okay. My first piece on the structure is that so long as it is a comprehensible piece of answer that you write, I think it's a good enough structure because it's not something which, because structure I think will become more important in your essay part, not as important in your legal aptitude part where you're just writing an answer. So long as I think it is following a very understandable and there is clarity in it, and there is the person who's reading it doesn't feel the facts are just too muddled up. It's one thing is written somewhere, other thing is written somewhere, and it's totally confusing to the person who's writing it, then I think that's a bad structure. But in absence of it, so long as it's a very clear cutting answer with not so much as confusion into it, I think it's generally a good structure. But what would be an ideal structure? I think an ideal structure would then look like firstly, starting with by taking your stance, then briefly mentioning what this problem is about, then going into discussing what is that you think is important in the problem, then analyzing all of this, and then writing in conclusion. That is, in my opinion, how an ideal structure would look like. But I think in a 150 word limit, or perhaps if you have to write an answer within a page, it's kind of hard to go through this structure. I mean, how much structure can you put in a one page answer? Okay. I think the best way to then go about it is in your intro part itself, write your stance, write what you think are some important facts, and then you start analyzing them, and then you write in a one or two line, you finish your conclusion. 80%, I think 80% of your answer should be your analysis part, something that I was discussing with you right now. That's why I didn't mention about structure too much, because I think so long as you have a good analysis, so long as you have a good explanation for your answer, I doubt your examiner is going to penalize you for not writing intro or for not writing the most uh, I don't know, convincing conclusion. Okay. It's fine if your conclusion is not as up to the mark or your intro may not be as perfect, as long as your actual body of the answer is good enough. So that's my two piece on the structure part. But if somebody's willing to go with the structure, I think you should definitely follow something along the lines of a brief introduction with 2-3 lines max, with then following with a main body of the answer and then going into the conclusion part. But do keep in mind, it's the main body of your answer, the explanation part, which will carry the most marks for you. Are we allowed to mark in the question paper, say underlining parts of the cases in part B to ensure that we don't miss them while writing answers? I really don't remember if we were allowed to mark our paper. Generally, papers don't allow you to mark anything. Because the part B was also taken up by the when we submitted our answer sheet, the answers of the part B were also taken along. So I think that is something you will be told in the exam itself. But in general, if you it might be beneficial to carry a pencil and then, maybe underline it or something. I'm actually not, I can't recall at the moment if we were allowed to underline those relevant facts or what is the important in a question. If you're not allowed, then I think it's just best while you're practicing through mocks to just memorize as to what you thought were important parts in an answer. I think you can also just make a small, for example, in your answer sheet, make a small section at the below, maybe at the below of your answer sheet. Over there, you can write down what are the important things you felt. I think that's allowed. That's something you'll not be restricted to do. So unless you're somebody who's definitely going to take up the entire sheet, if you're sure that you don't need the entire one page to write your answer, maybe just make a small separate section uh, at the lower section of the sheet, and over there you can just quickly write two, three things that you think are the important facts in this case, in this situation, and then you can just know from that what are the important bits that you want to keep your focus on. That would be my advice with regards to that, I think. Yeah. But if you're allowed to mark it, I think then all well and good. But I'm sorry, I actually don't remember. I'll get back to you. I'll ask other people from my batch if we were actually allowed. I just can't recollect it at the moment. All right. So now going through essay. So for essay part, firstly, I think the question is with regards to essay that I've gotten is how to prepare for essay topics. Firstly, I want to just briefly discuss that there will be three essay topics for you. And I think all three of them will have different, they'll come from different backgrounds. So it is to make sure that people with different levels of knowledge can all attempt the essay questions. And I also think personally that all essays are of different level of difficulties. Last year, there was this essay on one nation, one election. I think incredibly easy topic. All of us know what it is, and it is very easy to attempt. So I think in the worst case, even if you're totally clueless about or you're not the master of any one particular field, there will be an essay topic that you can easily attempt. So that's always there an option. But that being set aside, let's just talk about in general what the structure you can follow for your essay. Where can we practice such questions or relevant resources? I think like one of the mock test series is something that we are going to be releasing. Uh, we all, part of the NLS students, the people who have sat for NLSAT, will all be involved in framing those questions as well as checking those questions. So, as part of this training module that NLTI will launch for you, we'll all be providing you with such questions. We'll give you situations and problems which are similar to the ones that you might get in exam. There is no promise, definitely. The exam is going to have its own structure, but they'll definitely get you in a mindset to approach these kind of questions. So, yeah, we'll be giving you those resources available to you. We'll uh, problems will be available to you. You can attempt those problems, and then you'll also get a proper feedback for those. You'll get individual feedback in terms of how you wrote your answer and what are additional things you could have written in your answer. All those kind of things. They'll be involved as part of the training module that will be launching by NLTI. That promotion aside, um, in the terms of essay, all right. So I think the first thing in the essay that you have to start by, and this is a very general format I want to share about essay because once you look up through your other sources, you'll find there are so many ways in which you can approach an essay. But I think one of the very standard, easy to follow ways of an essay is that first, actually, no, before that, I want to just also talk about how do you study for your essay? What are the sources for essay? Okay. I think it's very hard for you to at the moment to cover topics for essay. I think essays in this paper will largely come from your newspaper editorials. They'll come from some articles or opinion pieces which are written in different magazines, in different websites, all those sort of things. But I think one good way of keeping in touch with those things at this very point when exam is only 40 days away is maybe to just go through the editorials of these newspapers for at least the month, for at least the year of January, or sorry, year of 2023, where you only have 3 months right now, right? For the January, February, and March. Go through the editorials. What it'll tell you is that it may not be able to give you too much information or something, but it'll tell you the way in which you have to structure an opinion piece. So when you're writing an essay or when you're writing anything, how to analyze it, how to write your opinions on it, how to use your information and combine it with your own personal remarks and then frame it in a best possible way. So I think reading those editorials, I'm not sure how good are the chances that the editorial that you'll read will actually come in the exam, but you'll certainly get one help from it, which is that you'll be able to see as to which is the general format you have to follow while writing an essay. I think that mindset and that kind of structure that you get from these editorials is actually very useful. Secondly, I think for essay topics, one of the very reliable sources is usually the IES preparatory websites, because the mains paper follows a lot of essay writing. So if you go to any of these websites, they routinely write essays on different topics. So two websites I'll recommend is Insights IAS and Drishti IAS. Go to their website and you'll see a section in that website where they write essays. So any new thing that has come up, so for example government passed a new act or there is a new uh, court's judgment, they always analyze that for you. They'll tell you what this act is about, what are the parts of this act, why has it been brought for by the government, what are the positives of this act, how does it benefit the society. Then they'll tell about what the shortcomings and they'll conclude it. Okay, so go to their websites. I think they routinely keep up with these uh, current topics. So I think you'll get the best possible summarization of new topics from their websites. And I think they are decent in numbers. They're not too much to overwhelm you. But I think just go up to their websites, and if every day you even read one or two essays, I think it should just get you in the habit of uh, getting more information or getting as much inputs you can on different topics around us. So these two websites, in I think Insights IES has been one that I've been told by multiple people is quite reliable. I think Drishti also regularly puts up. Apart from that, if you have any other your own independent resource, follow it by all means. But I think these two websites are actually quite good in writing essays. So go up on their websites, look up the any new topics. I think they have a very chronological and periodic sequence of different topics. So they've structured it for you already. So just go up, read them up, and I think that's more than enough for you to prepare you for the essays of this paper. Now that's sources. I think if there is anything more you want to know about sources, just put it in the comment section and I'll get back to you. Um, just a thought, what if there is a question in which both sides are at some fault, then what should the approach be? In almost every question, both sides are at fault, if you would realize that. Like, you'll barely get a question in which neither of the two sides look as though they're on a fault. If you look at this problem, I think last year in the paper itself, there were problems where both sides had some fault. So I think in that situation, it's usually still to see as to which side is at the least fault, maybe, or which side you think has the most uh, if the problem is giving some facts which you think is the most suited to one side, then just quickly pick up that side. But let me just tell you one general word of caution is that do not get too much stuck up on like which side has more merits or which side hasn't. Because I think when this problems are framed, they're framed in a way that the difference between each side is nothing more than like marginal difference. You'll barely get a problem in which the difference in one side compared to other side is like maximum or like it's way too huge. It's not. The problems you'll get are very marginal difference. It's unlikely to weigh on your scores in your essay, in your answers. So if you think there is a problem in which one side is like the correct side and other side is not so correct side, if you take up the correct side only then you'll get the maximum marks. It's not true. I think both sides have the potential of awarding you maximum marks. So while writing your answers or while picking up which side you want to choose, do not get too hung up on which side is the right side. I think certainly both sides have their own merits, and therefore just quickly take up the side, okay? Especially if you're short on time. Do not waste too much time in thinking about which side has like more merits or which side has less merits. But if in case you feel like a problem is definitely not balanced enough, in that case, I certainly do think then just give it a second read to the passage once again. You've read it once, read it once again, and then see which side you feel has more facts which are backing it. Because as soon as you get two or three facts, right, you just need two or three facts which are going in your favor. That is more than enough for you to write a good enough answer. Okay. So that's my general advice on those topics. Uh, don't compare the two sides. That is one thing you certainly shouldn't do because then that will take up too much time. You'll end up start making a debate in your own head as to, oh, this side has this thing, but what about this? What about that? You'll get too confused in your head. as soon as you think you have two, three important things that you can make up. So as soon as you have two to three arguments, this is one of the other question people had asked me, how many arguments should you make? I think two is a good enough number. Even one is a good enough number, in my opinion, if you are like articulate with your answer. But I think if you have two arguments that you are in your head sure about it, start writing your answer. Then don't waste too much time about, oh well, how do I then justify that other side has more points? You're not supposed to do that. Write your answer. How much time should you consider for part B? I think it's very subjective. I said this in the last session as well. It's something which will depend upon once you start writing, and therefore mock test series are important, because once you attempt a mock, you see how much it takes for you to finish your part A, and then how much it takes for you to finish your part B, and then see how much time in total you have taken. Okay, for instance, for both, if you took up that much amount of time, then you start adjusting it. Last year, the reason I can't give a straightforward advice is because last year we had 10 questions in part B of 5 marks each. This year you only have 6 questions of 10 marks each. So we had four more questions, and there was obviously an essay. For me, it took me 1.5 hours. I'm not a fast writer. I don't write as fast, okay? And part B carried the most marks last year, okay? Part A was just a qualifying exam. Part B was the actual exam on which our merit was based. So I was ready to sacrifice some of my part A. If I wasn't scoring 60 out of 17 part A, I was fine. I just wanted to score enough to qualify the part A. Therefore, I just finished my part A in 60 minutes because I didn't want to sacrifice any time on part B because that's where my merit is going to be formed. So I finished my part A. From my experience, I did some mocks. I realized that my timing in part B is taking me 1.5 hours, and that means I can't compromise with part B at all. It's non-negotiable. But part A I can compromise with because I know that even if I'm scoring 55 or around 50, that's what I scored. I scored 51. I'll still qualify the part A. I don't have to get the best rank in part A to be able to get into this college. So I just quickly got done with my part A. I knew it'll mean that I'll do more mistakes, and then I moved into part B. So that's my advice when I gave this exam. But now the things have changed a bit. Your part A and part B are carrying both will be factored into your final merit list. And part B has become relatively shorter than it was last year. So, in light of both of these facts, I would suggest for you to somewhere balance them out equally because now they'll carry. They haven't told. I don't think NLS has told how much weightage they'll give to both parts in your final merit list. So in that, I think it'll be useful for you to allot equal time to both because they'll both be carrying equal marks. But if you think you're a slow writer like me, then you should try to finish up your part A as soon as you can and then start writing your part B a bit sooner than you would ideally do so that you can finish your part B as well. So that's my piece of advice on timing. But I think your best um, uh, idea will get once you do a mock. I think mocks therefore are very useful for you. Once you do a mock, you'll know how much time you're taking up and how much you need to do adjusting, right? So I think once you do a mock, if you'll ask me this question once again, I'll be able to give you a much more specific response to it because I think it'll just vary for people. All right. Back to the essay part. Okay, I've told you the resources that you can use to look up for your essays. Besides these IES websites, I think you can certainly rely upon opinion pieces or column pieces which are written in newspapers. They are very useful for you to get a mental idea of how you want to do the structuring part. Then comes to how do you go about actually structuring your essay. Okay, in this structure becomes very important. Firstly, your essay shouldn't be opinionated. Okay, this is a very important bit. If your essay just looking like you're either supporting that one certain thing or you're against it, I'll just pick up essay from this paper. uh Aditya, if you can just scroll down the paper I've given you and take us to the current affairs essay, the last on the
Uh,
last page. You have three essays, okay?
Hemant, just give me 1 minute.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll put it on the screen.
yeah. It's totally fine. Okay, so you have a, if you look at this sample paper, there are three essay topics, okay? There is, should the Union government release the caste census 2011 data? The second one is about the how Ukraine war has shown us that the peace controlling measures that were made after World War II, such as United Nations, have failed us. And the third one is, do women hold the key to sporting glory in India's immediate future? You can clearly see that the third one is a relatively easier one, that are women's key to our sporting glory. Even if you're somebody who has no idea about what's happening around you, you can still write a good enough essay on this. Okay. Then I think it's followed by Ukraine one being a little bit complicated, where it is asking you to show that Ukraine war and the breakout of the Ukraine war shows you that the instruments of world peace that were established after World War II are no longer helpful to us. In this, I think the first and most important bit is to choose your essay topic very smartly. Okay, don't go after the hardest option just because you think somehow it's the hardest one, so it'll fetch you more marks. Even if you pick the easiest one, it'll get you just as much marks, so long as you're writing a good enough essay. So long as in your mind you know what is it that you want to write in it. Another important bit is to ask yourself on which one do you possess the most knowledge, and on which one do you're most sure that you have some opinions that you can put into that essay. Especially avoid going up for a topic which you think you want to do, because it sounds very exciting, it sounds something which might get you more marks, but in reality you have like, you're not that sure if you know as much about it. If you're not sure about it, no, avoid going after it. Okay, only choose an essay once in your mind you have made up that, okay, this is topic, I know enough about it, I know what is the relevant information I need, and then choose it. Okay, it's important in my opinion, because when I was sitting for the paper last year, when I saw one nation one election, I asked myself, well, it's a very normal topic, right? Like, it's not something which very special. Especially if I write it a essay on one nation one election and ask somebody to see how well I write, they'll probably say what an easy topic it is. But nonetheless, I chose it because I knew that in the context of the exam, and I was on a time crunch, I don't have the liberty to go around experimenting with my essay topic, or see, oh well, once I start writing, I'll figure out what I want to write. Don't avoid that. Strictly avoid that, because then the risk you're running is that you might just end up writing an essay with half-baked knowledge, with unclear thoughts, with unfinished arguments or analysis, and that will show in the exam. The once the person is checking, it will show that you weren't able to. You knew something, you wrote a line, but you didn't know how to back it with examples. You didn't write up some uh, relevant information around it, or you weren't able to complete it. It will show. So that's why be very smart about it. uh, be true to yourself, know what you are good with and what you're not good with, and then accordingly, in a very calculated way, choose your essay topic. Once you've chosen the essay topic, I think, let's just, for the purposes of illustration, I'll pick up this one, Ukraine war. Okay, so the first thing in this I would definitely start with in this essay is that asking, giving a brief description of why this essay topic, or what is the background to this. Okay, the background to this would certainly be explaining the Ukraine war and how has Ukraine war broke out, what is happening around it. Okay, this shouldn't be more than I think 5 to 6 lines, in my opinion, to tell what Ukraine war is going on. The Russians have invaded for the reasons that they feel that Ukraine is an integral part of Russia. Therefore, they feel that there is a sense of cultural and ethnic uniformity in these two nations, and Russia is claiming the ownership of the country. Therefore, the war has claimed the lives of so many people. Ukraine has been resisting, and this and that. Okay, you're given a brief background to it. Okay, quickly. This first shows that you have laid the groundwork for your essay. It's very important because once you write an essay, you have to lay the groundwork for it, on which you will start building up other things. Okay, then you start talking about why do you think that the mechanisms which were controlling international peace are not relevant in this context, and then you just talk about what are those mechanisms. So one of them is definitely United Nations. United Nations was made after World War II to ensure that we have sustained international peace. So in that you can include other things as well. Maybe you want to include International Criminal Court, but I think the safest option, in my opinion, is to just simply look towards United Nations. So that's why I think it'll be useful. Do we get a page for rough work? How much time? I don't think you have a page for rough work, but as I just stated, that just like in the lower section of your sheet, you should be able to write down if anything you want to write down. I don't think personally, from what I can recollect, that you actually get an entire page on which you can do your rough work. I think the best way to do your rough work is to just make, if there is an answer in which you didn't completely use your sheet, then quickly draw a line, write rough work, and then start doing a rough work in that sheet. I think it's completely fine. So yeah, on that lines, I think while doing these essays, it's important that once you've laid your groundwork, you've explained what is it, what, then you just give a brief uh, relevance of it, which is that why is it being discussed right now? Why is it important? War is broke out in Ukraine. Why are we discussing about whether or not the international peace measures are important? So then you just give a relevance of it. Then you say that, well, the idea is that Ukraine war is right now bringing or is kind of uh, leaning on towards another world catastrophe. It can possibly cause multiple nations to jump into war, and can cause another great scale war. So therefore, we think these institutions, which were supposed to be a guardrails against it, have once again need to put into be action and see if or not they have actually being of any use to us or not. So that's how you show that this essay is actually relevant to the current context. So then you show the relevance of it. Then you go into describing, yes, they're actually not relevant. That's the first part of your essay, that they're actually not relevant. Then you list out your reasons as to why you don't think they're relevant anymore. You can say that nations like United Nations have become very partisan. They are mostly run by a few countries which get veto power, and other countries are just not given enough opportunities. Is my video stuck or something? Yeah, it's working. Then you give one side of your arguments for why you think they are not working. Then you give other side of it why you actually think no, well, they have done their work, they have actually been working. Once you've given both sides, and that's what I mean, your essay should be well measured. It should give you a balanced perspective. It must not be an entirely piece which is just showing as to why you think it's United Nations has failed us. It's not of any use. It should actually be well balanced and it should be well measured. That's why I think your essay should definitely, you can definitely pick up one side. You can definitely show that you're leaning on one side, but you should also show it in a way that you are also giving credit to what other side is, which is that no, United Nation is actually useful. And in the context of Ukraine war, I do think it is doing its work. It is making sure that Russia backs off. It is, for example, multiple resolutions were passed in United Nations during this time, and those resolutions were backed by different countries. So you can use that piece of knowledge to show that actually United Nations is doing its work. These are the different ways in which you can just structure those things, and then you can just conclude it off. That's the general essence of an essay as to how it should look like. No, Arshi, there is no such compulsion. You can start with your essay, then write your part B, and then write your part A. You can start with part A, then do your essay and do part B. Last year, many of the people knew that essay contains the most marks. Therefore, they first attempted the essay because it had 15 marks. So when they entered into part B, they finished the essay first, and then they started writing these individual questions in part B. So I think it's up for you to decide. You can follow however you like. Once again, I think that's why the most important bit I want to just emphasize towards the end of the session is that mocks are very important because all the strategies that you want to use in an exam, you definitely can't use them as soon as you go into the exam, but instead you need to plan it out before itself. Whether you want to approach the exam by attempting part B first or part A first, or in the part B, do you want to first go about attempting the essay first or legal aptitude questions first? And that's why I think to be able to know or to know the answer to all these things, you should have some practice beforehand. Because even if you know what is what, if you don't have enough practice, it just falls short of the mark. And that's why I think like we all have like, because a lot of queries have come to us from different sources. I think therefore the knowledge we have as part of the NLS community, we are trying to put it all together with the mock test series that we will give you through NLTI. We have collaborated with them, and we can promise you that we'll be giving you the best of the uh, material through the mock test series. In the series, we'll not only be giving you the situations and then also be checking it for you. We'll also be giving you the feedback simultaneously for the same. We can give you tips in regards to how you can go about structuring the different things, for instance, your answers or what were the missing components in it, and simultaneously uh, give you the best possible suggestions and recommendations for it. So uh, I personally can't emphasize this, not just because we're involved with it, but also because we truly think that we want as many of you as possible to join us as our future batch for NLS. Uh, we having been through this exam, having been multiple people in my batch, almost we are 50 of us. We'll all be attempting to give you the best of the possible material on it by using our experience and knowledge and collaborating with each other. So it's important. It's that you also be well in touch with it, and therefore mocks. I cannot overstate their value at this point. So If you all have been preparing for this exam, if you all think that this exam is something that you truly want to go after and you want to be a part of the NLS community, I certainly think you should enroll yourself with a mock test series. You'll certainly get the best of the benefits that we can promise you with this. I'll just take up the questions before I conclude this session. Optimistic way forward. Conclusion. Yeah. I think definitely your conclusion in your essay should certainly be a very a very refined mix of showing that look, I think these are the problems, and this is the other part of your essay, which is that once you've told the good side of it and the bad side of it, you should also include some solutions to it. You can say, well, look, here are the problems with United Nations. I acknowledge the problems, but here are some policy measures we can take to make United Nations more effective. Instead of saying it's useless, let's just talk about how different reformative measures can be taken to make it a much more accountable body, to make it a lot more workable body. So actually an important bit. Thank you for pointing it out, Kavya. Um, in your essay, certainly include solutions and policy measures that we can take to address the shortcomings in these institutions. And once you've done that, in your conclusion part, then you can say, well, uh, having discussed all the positives and shortcomings with the ongoing issues, we certainly do feel that there is a massive scope of improvement, and the ongoing tragedy in the Ukraine offers us an opportunity to restructure our institutions in order to meet the modern demands. And that's why I think so. It's certainly a good thing. You should definitely conclude with an optimism instead of saying, well, it's gone beyond repair, it's useless, we can't do anything about it. It's a general piece of advice. So yes, definitely uh, put it your essay should be concluded in a way that it shows that there is a way forward, there is a hope left for us. Sci- Philosophical essays in the paper. I'm sorry, Yashashvi, what exactly do you mean by philosophical essays in the paper? Like, do you mean that are there essays that are philosophical? Maybe, I'm not sure, because so far from the last year's paper, if you'll see, most of the essays that are topics that are given are mostly topics which are happening somewhere in the world. So they haven't given any topic which is actually philosophical. Neither they have given it in their sample papers, nor they have given it in any of the other papers that NLS has conducted. So therefore, I think that philosophical ones so far haven't been the trend with NLS. And I'm not sure if they'll actually put in a philosophical essay if they haven't really put it up in any of their other uh, either sample papers or other modules they've given. So, yeah. So, well, I have tried to put up as much as I can. I think with this, we'll just have to conclude the session for today. If you do enroll with our mock test series, we promise to be in constant touch with you. And these sessions are certainly not a one-time sessions. We'll continuously organize these sessions as many times as you need. You'll see some other people as well besides me, uh, if and when needed. So if you do enroll with us, these sessions will be much more specific with each and every session as we come, because the last time I took a very general session. So with as we move ahead, we'll certainly get you a lot more specific topic related sessions wherein we discuss something that all of you feel needs to be, because for instance essay is something we can definitely go more in depth with. So uh, if you are with enrolled with our mock test series or enrolled with the NLSAT series and LLTI will release, I think you will find us meeting more often and discussing all of your doubts that you have, and we'll be interacting with you a lot more often. So thank you all for once again turning up and giving me your time. I wish you all luck with the exam, and I'm hoping to see you all soon. Aditya, you can take up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hemant. I mean, there's some technical issue because of which I can't turn on the camera. Uh, Guys, you've heard from the man himself. He got an All India rank 8. He's speaking from experiences, and I think his experiences can really help you do well in this paper. We have already put out the offerings that we are we have already put down like the things that we are willing to offer if you come and join us. More details about the course that we are planning to launch would be released on the Telegram group that I have also shared the link in the chat box, and it's also available in the description box of this video. Do join the Telegram group, and by the end of tomorrow, we are releasing the course, and all the details will follow on the Telegram group. I hope you guys enjoyed the session. We will have more specific sessions like how to build, like how what sort of a CV that you're supposed to upload and other things, how to fill that form, etc., etc. So it's going to be a great help for all of you. And I think, Hemant also mentioned the importance of mocks because that would really help you structure your strategy. So we are planning to also give you 5 to 7 mocks. Those would also be like checked and reviewed by people who have made it to NLS. So I think that's going to be a great deal for all of you. And with this, I think we'll wrap up the session. Thank you so much for joining. See you on the Telegram group.